Mike, you mentioned last week no tape of your opponents. I think you referenced that as worrisome. What's the plan to work around that?
I don't know that it's something that you can work around. It's a problem for the other 31 as well. So from that standpoint, it's fair. And worrisome is just what I use to describe it. I think that because we're all dealing with it, we're dealing with a level playing field in that regard, and it's going to be challenging, but equally.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition here of the Mass Steel Podcast with yours truly, Charles Prodigy Richey, which I am also the host of On Deck on ChicagolandSportsRadio.com, which you catch me on the weekends on Saturdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we are right now, once again, on the Mass Steel Podcast, going into week 2 of training camp with the pads on today. I got a few players that were listed by Mike Tomlin following his press conference earlier today, which took place about 4 hours ago. As he spoke with the media holding his virtual press conference, we had 2 players with some minor injuries. One of them excused for personal reasons. We'll get to that in just a second. Once again, if you guys want to be a part of the Mass Steel Podcast, the number we've reached, if you guys ever want to call in, it is 312-209-2232. Again, that is 312-209-2232. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Prodigy Richey. And for the Mass Steel Podcast on Twitter, it is at Mass Steel CJR. On Instagram, it is at Men of Steel Nation. And let's get ready to get right into it. The players that Mike Tomlin was alluding to, of course, he was definitely talking about, in case anyone missed it or didn't get a chance to see it on YouTube or on Steelers or on the Steelers app. Basically, the 3 guys that he mentioned, it was Chris Wormley, Chris Wormley, James Washington, and of course, you also had on there Maurkice Pouncey. Maurkice Pouncey was due to personal reasons. We got confirmation from the Steeler Depot that basically Carl Dunbar, he had a lower injury that he was dealing with ever since coming in. Right now, according to coach of the defensive line, Carl Dunbar, he's missing time with a lower body injury, and he was quoted as saying, this is Carl Dunbar, well, we've seen him this offseason as far as being here, and he's been slowed down a little bit by a lower body injury. He goes on to say, but he looks good. I mean, he looks the part. He's a 6'5" kind of kid, 290 pounds, and he's moving well. He's going to do some stuff today. So you just basically see him as a backup, and as far as in our Okie package, then an interior rusher when we go into sub package. So there you have it right there. I mean, Chris Wormley, who I thought was a nice, noble piece coming into the season to help shore up the defensive line, to kind of help fill the void of Javon Hargrave, don't forget, who was also last year. And I believe Chris Wormley, by the way, with his body work, what he's able to do in his career, I mean, basically, he's basically played his prior 3 seasons all with the Baltimore Ravens. He played nose tackle in 2018 and right defensive end in his final year. And this guy, remember, I mean, the career high he started for the Ravens was 7 out of 16 games. So he was more nobly a backup for that team. I mean, he was able to still pick up a career high in total tackles with 33 and 17 for his solo career high. And plus, he matched his career as far as tackles for loss with 2. But I think right now, I mean, like I said, anytime we get into this point, they expect injuries to pop up. You already know the deal pretty much around this time in training camp. And once we get ready to start the season real quick, and I just want to pay a quick shout out real quick on Instagram Live. I got Mike.Squirrel1993. Hey, bud. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe and staying healthy and getting excited for a possible full NFL season as we continue to march forward, which the NFL has been progressively doing all off season, including right now And I mean, I gotta tell you right now, if the NFL finishes this year the way they do, I gotta give up Roger Goodell and everyone in the NFL major props for finding a way to get this done. I mean, it's definitely going to be like one of the interesting things, real quick. I mean, for them all year long, it has been business as usual, as well as going forward. Their scheduled meetings and stuff and dates. I mean, the big noble changes that they made. Of course, you had the cancellation of the Hall of Fame festivities, including the Hall of Fame game between the Steelers and the Cowboys. Oh, preseason got wiped out. We found that about a month ago. I mean, and then those are basically the stuff that really made waves, I think, this season. And as you look at it too, I mean, how we're going to go ahead and find out how much effective not having a preseason, but I mean, under the circumstances where you're dealing with COVID and everything, I mean, how they're going to be able to manage to work this out and keep the ball rolling and trying to create a safer environment as the NFL insists they continue to do day in and day out. And as we look at it too, I mean, one of the biggest headlines earlier today too, as we look at, I'm sure you already heard, Cam Heyward's big waves too, him and his agent, Michael Parrott. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but basically, as everyone is aware, he last signed his last contract extension back in the summer of 2015, about July, as a matter of fact. He's in the final year of his his 6-year deal that he signed in that year. $9.5 million in base salary. The cap hit for him this year is going to be over $13.25 million for this season. And Cam Heyward, who obviously still expressed a little bit of frustration and some disappointment. I mean, basically earlier, and he was quoted saying, "There's no new updates, nothing of any substance. Y'all know where I stand. I want to be a Pittsburgh Steeler and lead this team to a Super Bowl." One of the key things he also said, too, it takes two to tangle. I mean, basically, for this time. And he's right. But like I said, too, I think the only thing is it's easier said than done. Unfortunately, when you got a lot of concerns how much of the cap is going to drop, I'm not saying that they're not going to try and offer him something. I'm sure Colbert and Lamar Khan are trying to crunch away at that salary cap, trying to give themselves more breathing room to set themselves up for next year, depending if or not Kevin Colbert elects to go for a 22nd season. He's in his 21st season going into this year. I mean, and when you look at the job that he's done over his 21-year career, basically, the previous 20 years, I should say. And it's always one thing in life, as in business too. What's one of the things you always want to do when you go transition somewhere else or you decide to step down? Make sure you're leaving your company or your coworkers and crew in good hands. I think Kevin Colbert is definitely handled it the right way. Again, don't take this as a slight to Cam Heyward that they don't respect the guy. I don't think that's the case at all. Cam Heyward, for the time that he's developed, in his career, and he's gotten better. Putting up some career numbers since signing his contract extension. Of course, his highest career in sacks was 12 back in 2017. And this guy, legitimately too, he's become a 2-time All-Pro with 3 Pro Bowl selections. And all the Pro Bowl selections, believe it or not, it's been since he signed his contract extension in year number 3. So that goes to show you right now, how much of a locker room guy this guy was. Of course, he was definitely one of the guys who expressed frustration about over a year ago about a communication and, but at the same time too, I think Cam Heyward's a guy when he speaks, I don't think he's trying to expose any dysfunction on the team. It may appear to come out that way on paper when you got a lot of people who are probably frustrated with the way Tomlin handles situations. But at the end of the day, too, I believe Heyward is saying stuff to kind of help create a spark under guys. Because don't forget last year, too, when they were 0-3 when they started off that season, and this was about going into the second game after they acquired Minka Fitzpatrick. don't forget, remember once upon a time when they were 0-3 right there, they had a hard-hitting practice going into their game against the Bengals. And some players were not too fond of that. Some players were a little TO'd on that. But at the same time, too, I mean, everyone had to admit, too, even Ramon Foster, I mean, even though some lines were crossed that day, you got to remember at the end of the day that they had to, find a way to come together, unite, and find a way to just rally around each other. And listen, I mean, it got them nearly to the playoffs with everything that they did. I mean, you went basically 5-5. No, excuse me. I mean, you went about 8-5 the rest of the way. But still, I mean, this was a team right here who a lot of people were writing off that season, that their season should have been done and dead a long time ago since Ben Roethlisberger was out on season-ending injury, was throwing elbow, which you never really experienced. I mean, as a Steeler fan, let alone the organization, I mean, this team definitely played with an attitude. And I just feel like right now, everybody, you just need to play right now, win or die trying. I mean, I think has to be the theme for this year, for this team. I mean, if they're going to do anything, if they're going to make it one last gasp of a run for a Super Bowl, now is the time. I mean, they're only one of 3-5 teams who have opted not to opt out for the 2020 season. They got their staff fully available. It's just all going to depend on right now the injuries. But I tell you what, though, the environment that Mike Tomlin is setting up for everybody and trying to keep everybody prepared, like I said, I think he's doing a phenomenal job right now. I really do. It's going to be interesting to see how it translates into the season, whether they get back into the playoffs, which I think they should, but just be that level championship caliber team that we expect them to be, the measuring stick right now. Let's get into some other stuff right now, some other headlines that were looming in today right now. There was also a highlight earlier, which was tweeted out by Ed Bouchette of The Athletic. You saw Ben Roethlisberger throw a nice little corner touchdown pass to rookie of Notre Dame, Chase Claypool. I mean, by the way, so that was nice to see him make a little leap and grab right there, get like a little sneak peek what to expect out of him in his rookie year. I mean, I even told last week I called in the locker room with Tunch and Wolf, and my guy that I'm excited for this year to see what the next step he's gonna be taking as far as on the offensive side of the ball. I'm definitely gonna be looking to Deontay Johnson. I mean, the Steelers team at the end of the day, I mean, their special teams returns for touchdowns or scores has been brutal, if you ask me. And I was one of the guys to. I mean, aside from that, I got my wish within the last 2 years, kind of, sort of, but more particularly last year, you've seen a lot more of a fire lit up as far as getting defensive takeaways, return for touchdowns, pick sixes, strip fumble returns for touchdowns. Now, I think the onus right now, where I'm going to set at the bar that I want to see raised to, is getting special teams returns for touchdowns. And I think that's going to say a lot more about this team going on. And I think what we need to do, because, I mean, for the guy that is coaching this special teams roster who is on here, which you got is Danny Smith, who is going into his 8th season with the Steelers. He's been there since 2013. I'd be interested to see how much Deontay Johnson is going to be really utilized. Is he going to take a step back? Is he going to keep going forward? I mean, I talked to one good friend of mine, and he definitely feels like this guy is the new next Antonio Brown, possibly. I mean, just making a second team All-Pro in his rookie year. I got to be honest with you, this guy is really someone to really spotlight, I think, this year. In addition with Chase Claypool, and definitely really put some good competitive pressure on a guy like a JuJu Smith-Schuster. Listen, I think a lot of people, even you can make the case for a guy like a James Conner right now. I mean, Benny Snell, who's definitely working as hard as Conner, made the case. I'd be really interested to see like how many reps he's gonna be getting in for this season, trying to come into games and like back up Connor, because you gotta believe right now, because I think Jerry Dulac, who was actually speaking with Rich Welsh, I believe it was, and what they were saying was like about like the running game this year, he expects it to be where they may go back to the old mentality, run it until the brakes fall off. And then maybe like Benny Snell will get some carries here and there. I think you have to, like I said, with the running game, I don't want to see the carries being shared as frequently as they did last year. I mean, don't forget, I mean, James Conner, too, by the way, I mean, who really just struggled pretty much like injury-wise, physicality, I mean, for this team. Because we all know and we see when he is healthy, he's got his mind straight, and he's not fearing anybody. I mean, this guy right here is a beast. I mean, when you look at it last year, I mean, he's only missed like 2 fewer starts versus 2018. He went 10 for 10 this year. Then in 2018, he started 12 out of 13 games. But you look at the drop off like within those couple of games right there, and you had like about 1,470 yards off of like over 270 touches, while the previous year, I mean the next year, you had 150 total touches for 715 yards with 7 touchdowns total, and which he had a career high in receiving touchdowns, believe it or not. As much as he was struggling last year, he still had 3 receiving touchdowns, which was a career high for Connor in his career. But, I mean, you look at it, too. I mean, his yards per game went down significantly, but a lot of that, too, was, like, how much, like, he was, like, splitting right there. And you pay attention, like, what he was doing on that squad. And I gotta believe James Conner right now. I mean, basically, by the way, I mean, a lot of it had to do with his snap count percentage on offense. He only had about 328 snaps. I mean, but the year before, he had more than double that, which was 718. So 64% versus 33% makes a huge difference. I think you gotta just let this guy have the ball right here. I would just if I'm that running group, I'm gonna just feed it to him. I'm gonna feed it to him often and more, because right now Eddie Faulkner, who joined the team about a year ago, I mean, he replaced Le'Veon Bell's running back coach, who was with the team before he moved on. But still, I gotta believe right now what we gotta see. You gotta find your new bell cow, the guy who's gonna take charge, and the guy you could just ride on when it's late in games. Because as everyone realizes, Steeler football at the end of the day, I mean, what you do, you rough them up on defense for most of the game, and then when you do got a lead, I mean, you try and tire people out with that running game, that hurry up rushing attack. And that's what you got to look at for the team right now. And I think that's what people want to see. I think definitely more so than ever, we'll definitely see a return back to Steeler football. Again, if you guys want to follow me on social media or catch today's show, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, primarily at Prodigy Richey. For the Men of Steel podcast, on Twitter, it is at Men of Steel CJR. On Instagram, it is at Men of Steel Nation. And let's get ready to continue to move along here. As far as JuJu Smith-Schuster, being asked a similar question about Cam Heyward when his contract situation was brought up. I mean, he wasn't really too approachable about that, but all he did say was, that's between me and my agent and the Steelers. And as he said on a Zoom call today to Brooke Pryor of ESPN.com, at the end of the day, I'm just here to play ball. I'm not going to be the kind of guy that sits out and waits regardless if there's a contract or not. And that statement right there, I hope it didn't come across like he was taking shots at some familiar players who played here. I don't think that was the case. But, I mean, at the same time, too, I mean, JuJu Smith-Schuster, at the end of the day, He's been one of the most humblest guys on and off the field, trying to do everything he can to help people. I mean, you saw how personable this guy is and how much he cares for people, just like James Carr right there. I mean, who bought his dad a car, I mean, this past offseason. And still, I mean, just looking out for a lot of people. And I just think, I mean, JuJu Smith-Schuster, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, how much attention do you really get when playing alongside Antonio Brown, helping him out in the receiving yards? But I definitely got to believe the help is going to be there this year. I definitely do believe that what we were going to look at this team, you're going to see him get, as long as Ben stays healthy and continues to work smart with this group, I think he's definitely going to be a very good supportive guy. I mean, being like the lead receiver, I don't know. I would like to think he's going to be, he feels like he earns that spot in his mind just based off his experience. But at the end of the day, too, you got to do what's going to be best for this team, what's going to be in the best interest of putting in wins and just moving forward and strafing yourself up for playoff positioning. And then when you get to the playoffs, who's going to be making those playmaking type abilities? That's what just really it boils down to. And I think JuJu Smith-Schuster, just like James Carr, I mean, they're playing with house money right now. I mean, this season. I mean, both of them, I mean, not being first-round picks, they got a lot. It's going to be pretty much just let it all hang out. But like I said, too, I would like to see how much interesting pressure or competition will we see in a Chase Claypool along with Deontay Johnson on like a JuJu Smith-Schuster and a James Washington. I mean, James Washington, too, that's another guy right here who's going into his third season. I mean, the same year he got drafted with Mason Rudolph. Ironically, even despite the fact that Kevin Colbert and the front office paid attention to the chemistry they had at Oklahoma State, I still find it very interesting how they're able to draft Washington first, then Rudolph. I don't know what that says very much about a guy like Mason Rudolph, but I got to believe right there, too. I mean, that says a lot, like how much they think of him at quarterback. I mean, or is it the situation, too, where at that time when you were drafting him, you realize how much years you had left in Ben Roethlisberger, how much you're going to try and keep him in the fold, extend him for a few more years, be a Pittsburgh Steeler, despite all the controversy you had with teammates or in the media in the last few years. I mean, is it more – did you still also feel like it was more – let's like here, the Ben Roethlisberger, well, we still got him, or we just didn't really think much of Mason Rudolph, who was having first-round grades in the combine, but they still took him, I mean, with their third selection in the draft. So I would like to hear your thoughts. Feel free to leave a comment. You can comment once again on my Facebook page, which is the Mass Steel Podcast. Feel free to like it, and you can get some notifications on your Facebook if you wish. And if you guys want to follow a different way, and do it by the handle instead, it is at Men of Steel Nation. And once again, you can also check me out on my Instagram at Men of Steel Nation. That is all lowercase for Instagram. So feel free to leave some questions if you guys want. And let's also look at, too, some news concerning some referees. Ed Bouchette mentioned this earlier today of The Athletic, along with Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk. He was also talking with Chris Sims, the son of Phil Sims. And basically this year there's going to be 5 referees out for this season. They're going to be taking a leave of absence. And basically these officials who stepped out, they will receive a $30,000 stipend for the year, and their jobs are protected for the 2021 season. Other changes to operating procedures this season include crew assignments designed to limit travel as much as possible and train to work with 5 official crews if necessary. The name of those officials are Jeff Bergman, Steve Freeman, Greg, I can't pronounce his last name, and we got Joel, I want to say Laro, I'm not too sure. Then we got Tony Steratori, back judge here. Now, one of the interesting things, too, that Mike Florio did mention, too, because don't forget, because I think they're going to be having, like, a little bit of expansion instant replay review as far as like in the booth review. They're going to have like a little bit of expansion, reviewing plays, whatever. I'm not sure if like more so on scoring plays or whatever. But, I mean, one of the things is, too, how much is that going to play a factor into this season? I mean, with teams in the NFL like the Steelers, are we going to see some controversial calls being called throughout the year? Is there going to be some questionable calls that are going to really like put them in a position where it come back and hurt them late in the season? I mean, we already seen how much most everybody pretty much admitted that the pass interference review that they tried in 2019, that they owed it to Sean Payton and the Saints. I mean, pretty much was a disaster. I mean, let's face it. We had one of those pass interference calls cost the Steelers last year. I mean, so to argue, I mean, I guess like that key one against the Seahawks, which should have probably been won. But, I mean, at the same time, too, those are some huge areas right there. Just to have that stuff being challenged, the next thing you can know is that could be something looming heavy in your season. Kind of like with 1998, which the botched ball in the air coin toss in Detroit against the Lions with Jerome Bettis and then the referee in that one. I mean, that one's still right there. I believe Jerome Bettis made clear what his call was, but the referee tried to insist that he was saying head tails at the same time, which it didn't sound very clear, like what he was saying to the official, like what he was going to call, and if they won, they will receive the ball. I had to reflip it, I believe, and that just right there, that was one thing that loomed. What ended up happening, they went 7-9 for that season. I think they were like 7-3 or 7-4 going into that game, but still, I mean, I don't want to make excuses, but you do see how once things start to like add up later in the year, how much they could still prove, they could still loom, and like be something you don't want to like let slip under the radar. I really believe that. So let's wait and see about that, but let's get ready to go into some fair or foul right now. Fair or foul topic number 1, Cam Heyward. This will be his last year as a Steeler. I'm going to say foul for right now, only because it's still unfair to say that when we do understand there's a lot of unknown with the salary cap dropping for next year. If it does drop, I'm sure it's going to drop somewhat, but remember, the worst that it could drop is $35 million. And when we look at a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, where they're at and trying to position themselves, I mean, when we look at their overall team cap, I mean, basically, and we total everything in here for right now, Pittsburgh Steelers, who actually just barely right now, they are $4.642033 million in cap space for the time being, which is good for right now. And when we go look as far as like the leftover carryover money, I mean, for this team, and we try and look at like where they stand, everything right there. I mean, for the Steelers right now, I mean, when we look at, I mean, they're over $4 million, close to $5 million in cap space, but their cap number, instead of it being the $198.5 million for this season, they had like about like an additional like a close to like a little over $2.1 million, and that was like the adjustments from like the unused cap. So I like I said, you gotta give Kevin Colbert the benefit of the doubt while he's still in office right now. I'm sure they're trying to game plan, set themselves up in nice position. It's still murky at this point. Fair foul topic number 2, JuJu Smith-Schuster. We've seen the end of JuJu Smith-Schuster as a Steeler. I'm probably going to have to say fair for right on that one, because based off Ed Bouchette, like he was even pointing out too, the way Steelers rotate different like receivers. I mean, they don't really keep a lot of guys based on popularity, as everyone is aware. I mean, you could even ask like a guy like Santonio Holmes, basically a guy who was Super Bowl MVP, and he got released like after the 2009 season. I think he had a little bit of like a weed addiction, but other than that, they know some little personalities with him. And I just feel like when you decide to pull up with a guy like Antonio Brown, I mean, don't get me wrong, Antonio Brown was a humble player for that team for so many years. I mean, with the Steelers in the black and gold. I mean, it just wasn't until like the last few years, probably like with the 2018 season, you started seeing a little bit more of a chippier guy when interacting with the media. I mean, definitely tell he had a lot on his plate, and he was not fine with a lot of questions that are being broached at him. I mean, fair or not, I mean, this guy right here, I mean, he kind of came to the pressure, took it. I mean, he had a lot of backlash from his quarterback, took it out on some of his teammates like JuJu. So I kind of believe right now, I hate to say it, as Smith-Schuster is a phenomenal human being and great blue-collar guy, but at the end of the day, I'm not really feeling too certain if he's going to stick around. I mean, he's got to have a big splash year, in my opinion. If you win the Super Bowl at least, or get to the conference, if you get to the conference championship game, I probably see why you may want to keep him around and have him work with. But the only problem is, how is he going to continue that chemistry if they got to transition to a new quarterback, where it's Mason Rudolph, where they decide to go get someone in the draft, or if they decide to trade for someone on a cheap for a few years. Those are some interesting things we have to look long and hard at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, that's going to do it for this edition here of the Mass Steel Podcast. Just want to thank those of you who took the time to join and tune in. Again, you can catch me every Mondays and Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, primarily at Prodigy Richey. For the Mass Steel Podcast on Twitter, it is at Mass Steel CGR, and on Instagram at Mass Steel Nation. As always, leave you. Don't be trolling, be rolling. I gone.